Okay, without further ado, I would like to introduce the second speaker of today, who is Next Billion and Ethereum fellow. Please give a big welcome to Markus Alburez Myers, please.
GM, can you hear me? Awesome. Hey, everyone. Really great to be here with you all. My name is Markus. I am one of the fellows that Taira was just talking about. And really the intention of this quick 15-minute talk is to share with you a little bit of just like practical insights into how exactly the Ethereum Foundation Fellowship has served as this launchpad for me, and then also kind of the research and work I've been doing as well. So what I'm going to do is run you through a little bit of the work I've been doing, and then also, just share some outcomes of this amazing research. The fellowship has been an amazing forum to really get to know sort of a number of other leaders in the space. But just as a quick background on myself, so I was born and raised in Guatemala, which is where I currently am. I wish I could be there in person with you all in Rome. But I've been deeply, deeply passionate about the role of transforming societies, leveraging innovative technologies, and really trying to think about how we advance humanity fundamentally. Here in Guatemala, we face some really systemic challenges. So that's always been sort of my reason for being. And one of the big challenges I'm very interested in cracking is the question of equitable housing. So in Guatemala, for example, we have over 2 million people that live in really inadequate housing. So you might imagine that might be quite similar to say something like the favelas in Brazil. But the problem is oftentimes when people want to upgrade their homes, which is a project that we are working on with something called Lamina Pop, we take people from living in the conditions you see in the top right to this, similar housing as far as materials go, but drastically enhanced livelihood outcomes. And we can build houses for folks at approximately $5,000 for a 30 square meter home. So the question though is that $5,000, to many people around the world may not seem like a lot of money, but the problem is that oftentimes it's a huge, huge barrier to entry. So the question is, how do we think about decentralized peer-to-peer finance, whereby instead of people having to pay, if you're lucky in Guatemala, you can access a loan for 30 to 40% interest rate, but that's incredibly prohibitive, right? Especially if you compare it to the interest rates that folks usually will have in North America or Europe. If you want to get a mortgage, you end up paying, let's say, 5 to 6%. So the question is, how could we give people access to low interest rate loans, leveraging crypto rails? So to give you an example, with Liquidity, which is a decentralized finance protocol, you can access a loan for 0% interest rate, right? So the question is, how do we democratize access and bring more people into the space by doing so? So the question here is, why does this matter? Why would anyone care about this, right? So we are already seeing the SEC cracking down and regulators around the world sort of looking around the crypto ecosystem and saying, hey, what's really going on here? Are we really building like new financial rails that are more equitable and give people much more access to building better livelihoods? And oftentimes the answer is no, right? So as a consequence for us, this map here I've just put up on the screen is a bit of the regulatory regimes that are being developed. So what you'll notice very distinctly is the colors in green, whether it's dark green or light green, or where there's already some sense of regulatory frameworks being developed or already established, and the colors that are in red, gray, or orange, either red meaning like already very heavily against regulatory regimes, against crypto, or a lot of undecided spaces as well. So what you'll notice is largely in the global south, we need to do a better job of educating regulators and bringing more access to understanding the value out of crypto, right? So, we also get to just like help each other out as we continue building out these decentralized systems. And then also there's like a high degree of impact that we can bring to folks around the world. So the question was, how do we go about answering, how do we bring, last mile loans to communities in Guatemala and throughout Latin America? What are all the different systems that need to be in place in order for that to happen? So what I did is I spoke with over 400 different protocols, researchers, devs, universities, and a whole host of other folks across the ecosystem to ask them basically the same question over and over and over again. and not just within the crypto ecosystem, right? I think it's also really important to not just, you'll notice a few names here: academic institutions, impact organizations, large institutional bodies, international ones as well. So really the question was, how do we build out this map? Part of the research process was also developing a open source sort of repository and gathering information through social media. So I posed a question of, hey, this is my take on how we make this happen. We had folks from around the world say, oh, have you thought about like moving account abstraction here? You should think more about, you know, underwriting. Let's explore on and off ramps in much more depth as well. And what we've come up with is basically this massive map that lays out from literally like the very fundamentals of what it will take for someone to access crypto, all the way down to like protocol layer infrastructure, blockchain scalability and privacy, on how we can bring crypto to 1 billion people around the world. So the intention with this map is really for, you know, crypto native builders to say, hey, I want to understand what are the missing gaps here right now. Also for, let's say, regulators in Latin America to get a holistic sense of how all of these pieces fit together. Oftentimes it can be like incredibly complex and confusing. And also for, let's say, an impact organization that wants to integrate crypto, they can then look at all of this content and say, okay, now I understand where this is coming from. So what I showed previously was more sort of like high level introduction into blockchains. And then the second aspect is much deeper on sort of the infrastructure, the applications themselves that need to be built in order to bring last mile lending as well. And in addition to, you know, all of this research I've been conducting, I put together a report, which is version 1, which you'll be able to access. Some of you may have already read it. It's about a 50-page document that lays out the previous graphic I laid out, but in written form. I'm creating a podcast right now called the Last Mile DeFi Podcast, which is a 10-part series too on, you know, how do we bring crypto to billions of people around the world. And on the next slide, I'll highlight a few different stories. We've hosted similar to, you know, SpaghettETH and other communities that are popping up around the world. We've hosted here in Guatemala, and really it feels that we've planted a very strong seed for more work to happen, more impact to happen throughout the Latin American ecosystem and region. And again, much of this powered by the fellowship program, as well as really the wider Latin American community that is popping up right now. So I wanted to just address a couple of really fascinating cases here as far as the utility that we've already seen in Latin America. So there's a project called Ethic Hub. Some of you may already be familiar with Ethic Hub, but they provide last mile loans to agricultural farmers in Mexico, Peru, Ecuador, and a number of other countries. And the way they do that is they give farmers they organize them into collectives, and as a collective, they take out a loan. So anyone around the world can offer loans to these farmers with drastically lower interest rates than they would get otherwise through, say, shark loans or through microfinancing institutions. So they're getting, you know, a fraction of the interest rate than they would otherwise get elsewhere, right? So huge impact, and double-sided. It's not just financial. There's also sort of a regenerative impact as well. These farmers can then invest in agroecology and better farming practices. So already seeing some really substantial impact flourish from this movement, which is really exciting. Another example here is on the bottom left. On the bottom left, you'll see Rappi drivers. So these are the delivery drivers that are very common throughout Latin America. There's a project that I'm going to be speaking with and have a podcast coming out in a couple of weeks called Roda. And what they do is they provide digital identity for Venezuelan migrants. So what happens is, over the course, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with what's happened in Venezuela as of late, but what Roda does is they issue digital identity that says, hey, you are a verifiable borrower and you can access, you know, these certain types of loans. And again, the intention is to leverage crypto to build this sort of like on-chain reputation score that obviously has all the right sort of like privacy implementations embedded into it. But really the question is, you know, how do we bring crypto to communities around the world that have most to gain from it? I'm speaking with some last mile communities as well. And there we'll be exploring, you know, what role, these slides are hopping around. What role crypto will have in their lives. And then also with some educators too. So obviously the role of education, what you're doing right now with SpaghettETH is super crucial. But how do we democratize developer education? So I shared all these different stories with you just to say, as Taira was mentioning, like I think we have to do a better job of highlighting the true impact that crypto is having on the world. Sorry, and continue to share, the relevance of this amazing technology with people globally, and build these sort of exogenous systems that create much more resilient infrastructure for us to build on, for us to reference when we speak to, okay, what value does crypto have in the real world? So with that, this is a link here to my link tree where you'll be able to find the report as well as some social links. On my Mirror page, you can also find a lot of the podcasts I've been publishing. I'm publishing 2 a week now over the course of the next 5 weeks. So be sure to keep updated on that, and happy to answer any questions if there are any. But yeah, thanks again for your time.
One, two, check, 1, 2, 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 check. Okay. Thank you, Markus. Any questions for him? One?
Hi, Markus. Thank you for your speech. And I would like to know, how did Ethereum Fellowship Program supported your project, as well as what are main 3 takeaways of this journey you made with them, as well as what other project would you recommend to have a look into, which are doing good, leveraging peer-to-peer technologies and cryptography for doing good? Thank you.
Awesome. So I think the question was, what was the journey like going through the fellowship, and what other projects have I seen throughout the ecosystem, right? Yes. So yeah, so the journey itself was incredible. Like I think that being in an ecosystem like the fellowship, I think is one, just really great to be surrounded by people that are deeply passionate about the role of crypto in emerging economies and onboarding more people around the world. And generally, can sometimes be like a little bit, I guess, isolating, because you're maybe just sort of like waving a flag and hoping that people sort of are called towards it. But being in a sort of very nurturing environment and having monthly check-ins with the team, and then checking in with the other fellows, I think is a great space to be able to co-create and ideate around, hey, have you thought about this, or get feedback from the EF as well. Really shaped a lot of my thought process. As far as other projects, like there are so many. What I would recommend is do check out the report I just published. Also follow along with the podcast, because I'm going to be highlighting 10 different projects that are doing some incredible work in the region. But this was just a couple of them, but hopefully that should give you enough context. And my DMs are also always open, and super happy to chat too with any interested builders.
Okay, Markus, thank you very much for dedicating some time to us. We hope to have you here in Italy soon, as soon as possible. Please, one big applause.
Hopefully as well, next time around.